The stars had always been quiet. For 300 years, humanity had looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. On the morning of March 15th, 2347, they received their answer. Captain Una Park stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel Time's Defiant Asterisk. Her hands clasped behind her back as she stared at the viewing screen. Coffee had gone cold in her cup hours ago. Sleep was a distant memory. None of that mattered now. 3,000 alien warships hung in the darkness near Jupiter. Each one was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with metals that Earth scientists could not name. Their weapons hummed with energy that sensors could barely measure. "Captain," Lieutenant Minho Baek said from his station, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. "The alien fleet has stopped advancing. They are holding position." Una nodded slowly. "They want us to see them first. They want us to understand how small we are." Dr. Hana Cho, the ship's science officer, looked up from her console. "I am receiving a transmission, Captain. It is being broadcast to every device on Earth. Every screen, every speaker. They want everyone to hear this. Put it through." Una said. The screen flickered. A face appeared, if it could be called a face. The alien had gray skin stretched over a skull that was too long, too narrow. Its eyes were black pools, without whites or pupils. When it spoke, its mouth moved in ways that did not match the translated words. "I am High Commander Valen of the Galactic Accord," the creature said. "I speak to the species, known as humanity. You have been observed. You have been measured. You have been judged." Una felt her crew grow still around her. On Earth, 8 billion people held their breath. "The Galactic Accord rules this galaxy," Valen continued. "We have done so for 10,000 years. 200 species live under our protection and guidance. Your kind is young, primitive. You have achieved basic space travel, but you are centuries behind the weakest of our members." The alien leaned forward, and something like pleasure crossed its strange face. "You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. Your governments will dissolve. Your military will disarm. Your population will be relocated as we see fit. Your technology will be regulated. You will become a client species of the Accord, and you will serve as we command." Valen paused, letting the words sink in. "If you do not surrender, we will reduce your planet to ash. Your species will end." This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is your only warning. Mani Lo, one sound. The screen went dark. For a long moment, no one on the bridge spoke. Ensign Suji Yoon, the youngest member of the crew, wiped tears from her cheeks with shaking hands. Minho stared at his tactical display, watching 3,000 red dots that represented death itself. Hana broke the silence. "Captain, I am receiving communications from Earth. The governments are. They are in chaos. Some leaders are calling for immediate surrender. Others want to fight. No one can agree on anything." Una turned away from the screen. She walked slowly across the bridge, her boots clicking against the metal floor. Her mind was racing, but her face showed nothing. "Hana," she said quietly, "you have studied their communications. You have analyzed their language patterns for the past 6 hours. Tell me something. ND. Well, be. Do. Anything, Captain. In all of their history, 10,000 years of ruling this galaxy, has anyone ever told them no?" Hana blinked. She looked down at her data, scrolling through translations, cultural analyses, historical records that the Accord had broadcast as proof of their power. "No," she said finally. "Never. Every species they have encountered has surrendered. Some fought briefly, but all of them gave up in the end. The Accord has never faced true resistance." Una smiled. It was a small smile, tired and sad, but real. "They do not know what we are," she said softly. "They see our small ships and our primitive weapons. They see a young species that has barely left its home planet. But they do not see what makes us human. Minho stood up from his station. Captain, what are you thinking? Before Yuna could answer, the communication console lit up. Admiral Taewu Kang's weathered face appeared on a smaller screen. He was the commander of Earth's entire defense fleet, 40 ships against 3,000. His eyes were heavy with exhaustion and grief. Captain Park, he said. I assume you saw the transmission. Yes, Admiral. The governments are deadlocked. Half want to surrender, half want to fight and die with honor. No one has authorized any response to the aliens. He paused, his jaw tightening. But someone needs to say something. Someone needs to speak for humanity. Yuna understood what he was not saying. He was giving her permission, or perhaps asking her to do something that no one else had the courage to do. Admiral, she said, if I speak only for myself. I cannot represent Earth. Kang's old eyes met hers through the screen. Yuna, right now, you are the only ship between Earth and that fleet. You are the only human those aliens can see. Like it or not, you represent all of us. The transmission ended. Yuna stood alone in the center of her bridge. Her crew watched her, waiting. On Earth, leaders argued, and populations panicked, and children cried in their mother's arms. She thought about her life. She had grown up poor on a mining station in the asteroid belt. She had worked 16-hour shifts, breaking rocks in the cold darkness of space. She had clawed her way into the military through sheer stubbornness. She had never been given anything. She had earned everything, and now the galaxy wanted her to kneel. Hana, she said, her voice calm and clear. Open a channel to the alien flagship. Broadcast it everywhere to the fleet. To Earth. To every corner of this system. Hana hesitated. Captain, the governments have not authorized. I know. Yuna turned to face the screen. Do it anyway. The channel opened. A small red light indicated that she was live. Billions of humans and thousands of aliens were watching. Captain Yuna Park took a deep breath and began to speak. Every screen in the solar system displayed the same image. A woman with black hair pulled back in a tight bun. A face that showed no fear. Dark eyes that burned with quiet fire. On the bridge of the Accord flagship, High Commander Valen watched with mild curiosity. He had seen countless species receive his ultimatum. He had watched them beg, weep, and surrender. This human would do the same. They always did. Captain Yuna Park began to speak. High Commander Valen, she said, her voice steady and calm. I am Captain Yuna Park of the Earth vessel times Defiant Asterisk. I have received your ultimatum. I speak now not as a representative of any government. I speak as a human being, one of 8 billion, who call that blue world home. On Earth, people stopped what they were doing. Factories fell silent. Cars pulled to the side of roads. Families gathered around screens. In living rooms, in hospitals, in schools. You have ordered us to surrender, Yuna continued. You expect us to kneel. You believe your numbers make you inevitable. 3,000 ships against our 40. 10,000 years of conquest against our 3 centuries of space travel. She paused, and something like a smile touched her lips. But you have made a mistake. Valen leaned forward in his command chair. This was not how the speech usually went. You see, we humans have a strange way of living. When someone tells us we cannot do something, we do it anyway. When the universe pushes against us, we push back harder. You look at us and see a weak species. Let me tell you what I see. When I look at humanity, Yuna's voice grew stronger, filling the bridge of her small ship. I see a species that crawled out of caves with nothing but rocks and fire. I see people who crossed oceans in wooden boats because they wanted to know what was on the other side. I see dreamers who built towers to touch the sky and fools who strapped themselves to rockets because they wanted to walk on the moon. Across the galaxy, on 100 worlds, client species of the Accord stopped to listen. These were species that had surrendered long ago. species that had forgotten what freedom tasted like. They heard the human woman speak, and something stirred in their hearts. "You ask for our surrender," Yuna said. "Let me tell you what we surrender. Nothing. We give you nothing. We will fight you with our 40 ships. When those are gone, we will fight you with our space stations. When those fall, we will fight you from our cities, our mountains, our oceans." High Commander Valen's officers exchanged uncertain glances. This was not supposed to happen. Primitive species did not speak this way to the Accord. "You will have to kill every single one of us," Yuna continued, her voice like iron. "And even then, our ghosts will haunt your dreams. You think you know what war is? You have conquered species that gave up after the first battle. You have never faced a people who would rather die standing than live on their knees." In the streets of cities across Earth, people began to gather. Strangers looked at each other and saw not differences, but shared humanity. Old enemies remembered that they were all from the same small planet. "You have 3,000 ships. We have something you cannot count. We have spite. We have defiance. We have the stubbornness of a species that survived ice ages and plagues and wars and everything the universe could throw at us." Yuna took one step closer to the camera. "So here is my answer to your ultimatum, High Commander. Turn your fleet around. Leave our solar system. Go back to your Accord and tell them what you found here. Tell them that Earth is not for sale. Tell them that humanity does not kneel. Tell them that we are not afraid." She straightened her shoulders, and her final words rang out across the stars. "You want us to surrender? Come and take our surrender if you can." The transmission ended. On the bridge of the Accord flagship, there was silence. Complete, absolute silence. For 17 minutes, no one spoke, no one moved. High Commander Valen stared at the empty screen as if he could not understand what had just happened. Finally, one of his officers spoke. "High Commander? What are your orders?" Valen's black eyes narrowed. In 10,000 years, no one had spoken to the Accord this way. No one had dared. This human woman, this captain of a tiny ship, had just insulted him in front of the entire galaxy. "Destroy them," he said, his voice cold with fury. "Start with her ship," but across the galaxy, the damage was already done. On a dozen worlds, client species whispered to each other about the human woman who had said no. On 100 more, slaves and servants began to wonder if surrender had been the only choice after all. And on Earth, something remarkable happened. Governments that had been arguing stopped their arguments. Leaders who had wanted to surrender changed their minds. Factories that had been silent roared back to life. Men and women who had never held weapons lined up to volunteer. Captain Yuna Park had not asked for permission to speak. She had not consulted with presidents or generals or councils. She had simply spoken the truth that lived in every human heart. Within hours, Earth's message to the stars was clear. They would not surrender. They would not run. They would fight with everything they had. And if they died, they would die free. Admiral Taewoo Kang sent a single message to Captain Park. "Well done, Captain. Now comes the hard part." Yuna read the message and looked out at the alien fleet. 50 ships were breaking formation, heading straight for her position. Their weapons were charging. In minutes, they would be within firing range. She turned to her crew. Lieutenant Minho Baek was ready at tactical. Dr. Hana Cho was monitoring enemy communications. Ensign Suji Yoon had her hands on the navigation controls, her earlier tears replaced by fierce determination. "They are coming for us," Yuna said simply. "They want to make an example of this ship. They want to show humanity what happens when you say no." "What do we do, Captain?" Minho asked. Yuna smiled a real smile this time, full of the wild courage that humans had carried with them since the first cave dweller looked at a mammoth and thought, "I can take that." "We show them what happens when you corner a human," she said. "Battle stations. All hands prepare for combat. Matter from the Times, Defiant Times, turned to face its enemies. One ship against 50. Impossible odds. Certain death. But Captain Una Park had meant every word of her speech. She would not surrender. She would not kneel. And if this was the day she died, she would make sure the galaxy remembered how humanity faced its end. The first enemy weapons locked onto her ship. Minho, she said calmly. Let us teach them about human spite. The first blast of alien fire missed the Times Defiant Times by less than 50 meters. The ship shook as the energy passed close enough to scorch the hull. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. Evasive pattern Delta, Captain Una Park commanded. Suji, take us into the asteroid field. Ensign Suji Yoon's fingers flew across her controls. The Times, Defiant Times, banked hard to the left, diving toward the scattered rocks that orbited Jupiter. Behind them, 50 Accord warships followed in perfect formation. Captain, Minho said from tactical. Their weapons have 3 times our range. We cannot outrun them. I know. Una watched the asteroid field grow larger on the screen. We are not trying to outrun them. We are trying to outthink them. The Times Defiant Times plunged into the field. Rocks the size of buildings tumbled past the viewport. Smaller debris pinged against the shields. It was chaos. Beautiful, dangerous chaos. The Accord ships hesitated at the edge of the field. Their commanders spoke rapidly to each other across communication channels that Dr. Hana Cho was monitoring. They are confused, Hana reported. Their ships are too large for this kind of flying. They are arguing about how to proceed. Una smiled. Their ships are built for open space combat. Clean, elegant, safe. They have never had to fight dirty. And we have? Suji asked, narrowly avoiding a spinning chunk of iron. I spent 15 years as an asteroid miner before I joined the military, Una said. I know these rocks better than I know my own face. Minho, do we still have mining charges in the cargo bay? Quote, I have new. Quote, quote, Minho blinked in surprise. Yes, Captain. Standard equipment for emergency excavation. But they are not weapons. Everything is a weapon if you are desperate enough. Una pointed at a cluster of large asteroids ahead. Take us there. When I give the signal, fire the charges into the 3 largest rocks. The Times Defiant Times weaved through the debris field with movements that should have been impossible for a military vessel. But Suji was learning fast, and Una was calling out directions based on instincts built over a decade of dangerous work. Behind them, 3 Accord ships finally entered the field. Their elegant hulls scraped against rocks. Their shields flared with each impact. They were faster than the Times Defiant Asterisk, but they were also clumsy. They are gaining on us, Minho warned. Good. I want them close. Una watched the distance shrink. Closer. A little more. The 3 enemy ships were now fully inside the asteroid cluster. Their weapons charged, ready to fire at point-blank range. Now, Minho. Fire the charges. Mining charges were not designed to destroy ships. They were designed to break apart asteroids for easier processing. But when 3 of them detonated inside a tightly packed cluster of rocks, the result was catastrophic. The asteroids shattered. Thousands of tons of debris exploded outward in every direction. The 3 Accord ships had no time to react. Their shields, designed for energy weapons, could not handle the sheer physical force of a mountain of rock hitting them at high speed. 2 ships were crushed instantly. The third lost power and tumbled away into the darkness, dead and silent. On the bridge of the Times Defiant Asterisk, the crew stared in disbelief. They had just destroyed 3 enemy vessels without firing a single shot from their weapons. They did not expect that, Hana said quietly. In 10,000 years of warfare, no one has fought like this. Una opened a broadcast channel, the same one she had used before. She knew the Accord was listening. She knew the galaxy was watching. 3 down, she said calmly. 2,997 to go. Would you like to continue? The remaining 47 ships pulled back from the asteroid field. They regrouped, recalculated, reconsidered. High Commander Valen's voice crackled across the communication channels, ordering them to attack again. But for the first time, his officers hesitated. On the Accord flagship, Emissary Torak watched the battle with growing fascination. He was a diplomat, not a warrior. But he had studied countless species throughout his career. He had never seen anything like these humans. They were outmatched in every way that mattered: technology, numbers, resources. By all logic, they should have surrendered or died. Instead, they were using rocks as weapons. They were turning their weakness into strength. Torak approached High Commander Valen carefully. "High Commander, may I speak?" Valen's black eyes burned with anger. "What is it?" "I have studied humanity's history. They are a species that has spent most of their existence at war with each other. They have survived situations that should have destroyed them many times over. Perhaps we should consider..." "Consider what?" Valen snapped. "Retreating? Because of one ship? And a few clever tricks? Not retreating. Reconsidering. This species does not think like others we have conquered. They are unpredictable. Dangerous." Valen stood from his command chair. "They are insects, and I will crush them personally." Torak bowed and stepped back. He had said what he could, but in his mind, a small seed of doubt had taken root. Meanwhile, help was coming for the time's defiant asterisk. Admiral Taewu Kang had gathered Earth's remaining 39 ships. They were not much old patrol vessels, converted cargo ships, a few proper warships, but they were coming at full speed. Kang sent a message to Captain Park. "Hold on. Yuna. We will be there in 2 hours." Yuna looked at the enemy fleet still surrounding her position. 47 ships remained nearby. Thousands more waited beyond. 2 hours was a very long time. "Suji," she said, "find me another asteroid cluster. Minho, check our remaining mining charges. Hana, keep monitoring their communications. I want to know what they are thinking." "Captain," Minho said slowly, "we cannot survive 2 hours against these odds, even with tricks." Yuna turned to face her crew. They were tired. They were afraid. But they were still fighting. "We do not need to win," she said. "We just need to make them bleed. Every ship we destroy is a ship that will not reach Earth. Every minute we survive is another minute for our people to prepare." She put her hand on Minho's shoulder. "We are not fighting to live, Lieutenant. We are fighting so that others may live. That is what humans do. That is what we have always done. Obtu. Let's the 5. We have always done." End quote. The times, defiant times, turned back toward the enemy. One ship against an empire. A woman from an asteroid mine against the rulers of the galaxy. But in that moment, watching their captain face impossible odds with nothing but courage and spite, the crew of the times, defiant times, understood something important. They were not going to surrender. They were going to fight until the very end. And somehow, against all logic, that felt like victory. Admiral Taewu Kang arrived with 39 ships and a plan that would have made traditional military leaders weep with frustration. He had spent the journey studying every piece of information they had about the Accord, their tactics, their psychology, their history of conquest. What he learned gave him hope. "They have won every war for 10,000 years, Kang told his captains over a secure channel. "But they have done it the same way every time. They show overwhelming force, the enemy surrenders, and the war ends. They have never faced an enemy who refused to quit." Captain Yuna Park listened from the bridge of the Time's defiant asterisk, her ship scarred but still flying after hours of cat and mouse fighting in the asteroid field. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" she asked. "We cannot beat them in a straight fight. So we will not fight straight." Kang's weathered face was grim but determined. "We will use guerrilla tactics. Hit and run. Strike where they do not expect. Make them afraid of every shadow. Over the next 3 days, Earth's tiny fleet made the mighty Accord question everything they knew about warfare. Human ships attacked supply lines and retreated before the enemy could respond. They used the moons of Jupiter as cover, appearing from behind one and disappearing behind another. They sent false signals and decoy drones to confuse Accord sensors. Lieutenant Minho Baek discovered that Accord ships communicated using a specific frequency range. Dr. Hanacho figured out how to jam it. Suddenly, enemy vessels could not coordinate their attacks. They stumbled into each other's firing lines. They shot at shadows that were not there. Ensign Suji Yoon became famous throughout the fleet for her impossible flying. She navigated the defiant times through gaps that should have been too small, used gravity wells to slingshot around moons, and once flew directly through the rings of Saturn using the ice particles as cover. But the most important change was happening far from the battlefield. Across the galaxy, client species watched the war unfold. They saw a species with 40 ships hold off an armada of thousands. They heard Captain Park's words repeated again and again in secret. "We do not kneel." On a world called Tessera, workers in a mining colony stopped their labor and refused orders from Accord overseers. On another planet, servants in a diplomatic station locked themselves in a room and demanded better treatment. Small acts of defiance. Sparks in the darkness. The 12 Voices, the ruling council of the Accord, began receiving reports of unrest on dozens of worlds. They were forced to pull ships away from the Earth invasion to maintain control elsewhere. High Commander Valen grew more frustrated with each passing day. He had expected the war to last hours. It had now lasted weeks. His officers whispered behind his back. Emissary Torak had been confined to quarters for suggesting negotiation. "Find their commander," Valen ordered. Valen committed more and more resources to hunting the time's defiant asterisk. He pulled ships from other positions. He ignored the broader tactical situation. His war had become personal. Admiral Kang saw the opportunity. "He is obsessed with you, Yuna," Kang said during a brief communication window. "He is making mistakes because of his anger. What do you want me to do? Keep him chasing you. Lead him away from the main fleet. I have a plan, but I need time to position our ships." Yuna understood what he was asking. She would be the bait, the target, the distraction. "How long do you need?" she asked. 12 hours. 12 hours of running. 12 hours of every enemy ship trying to kill her personally. 12 hours of being hunted by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. "I can do that," Yuna said simply. The chase was brutal. The defiant times, flew through radiation storms that should have fried its systems. It skimmed the surface of moons so closely that its hull scraped against rock. Suji performed maneuvers that no training had ever taught her, learning in real time how to survive the impossible. Enemy ships fell behind one by one, unable to match the times. Defiance times desperate speed and reckless courage. But more always came. Valen had sent over 100 vessels just to catch one small ship. Finally, after 12 hours, Kang sent the signal. The human fleet had gathered near Saturn's rings, all 38 remaining ships in a tight formation. The Accord's main force, weakened by the ships Valen had sent chasing Yuna, moved to engage. What happened next would be remembered as the Battle of Saturn. Admiral Kang led the attack personally. His flagship, the Time's Eternal Soul Asterisk, was old and battered and held together with patches and prayers. But it was fast, and Kang knew how to use it. The human fleet scattered the moment the Accord ships arrived. Instead of fighting in formation, they split into small groups, attacking from different angles, retreating before the enemy could concentrate fire. It was chaos, human chaos, unpredictable and wild. The Accord lost 47 ships in the first hour. They had never taken such losses so quickly, but the humans lost too. 18 ships destroyed, hundreds of lives gone in flashes of light and silent explosions. Kang saw that the battle was turning against them. The Accord had recovered from their surprise. Their superior numbers were beginning to tell. In another hour, Earth's fleet would be gone. So he made a decision. All ships, retreat to Rally Point 7, he broadcast. Then he turned the Time's eternal soul times toward the heart of the Accord formation, their command ships, their communication hubs, their most important vessels. Admiral, what are you doing? Yuna's voice came through the radio, filled with sudden fear. My job, Captain. Kang smiled, his old face peaceful for the first time in weeks. I never had children, Yuna, but I would like to think, if I had, they would have been like you. Tewu, please, win this war. For all of us. The Time's eternal soul times accelerated to maximum speed. Accord ships fired at it, scoring hit after hit. But Kang had overloaded his shields and engines. He was not trying to survive. He was trying to reach the center. His ship plunged into the middle of 15 Accord command vessels. Its reactor, pushed far beyond safe limits, detonated. The explosion was visible from Earth. When the light faded, 15 of the Accord's most important ships were gone. Their command structure was shattered. Their coordination collapsed. On the bridge of the Time's defiant asterisk, Yuna Park stood in silence. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But her voice was steady when she finally spoke. All ships, this is Captain Park. She had 22 ships left. The Accord had lost over 100, and their fleet was in chaos. For the first time since the war began, humanity was winning, but Yuna knew the war was not over. Thousands of enemy ships remained. Valen was still alive, still furious, still determined to destroy them. Then a message arrived on a secret frequency. A message from someone she never expected. Captain Park, the transmission said. My name is Emissary Torak. I believe I can help you end this war. Will you meet with me? Yuna looked at the stars, at the debris field where Admiral Kang had made his sacrifice, at the distant glow of Earth. Yes, she said. I will meet with you. The meeting took place in a small shuttle, floating in neutral space between the two fleets. Captain Yuna Park came alone, against the advice of everyone who cared about her. Emissary Torak came alone as well, his gray face unreadable as he sat across from her. You are either very brave or very foolish, Torak said. I have been called both. Yuna studied the alien carefully. Why did you contact me? Torak was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his robes and pulled out a small device. It projected images into the air between them. Images of suffering, of enslaved peoples, of worlds burned, and species destroyed. The Galactic Accord is dying, Torak said quietly. We have ruled for 10,000 years, but our rule is built on fear, not strength. We conquer because we have forgotten how to create. We destroy because we cannot build. Yuna watched the images flash past. Millions of lives, crushed under the Accord's boot. Our technology has not advanced in 3,000 years, Torak continued. Our art is dead. Our science is stagnant. We take from others what we cannot make ourselves. And the 12 voices our ruling council, they know this. They are terrified. Terrified of what? Of you. Torak's black eyes met hers. Not your ships. Not your weapons. Your spirit. The way you refused to surrender when logic demanded it. The way you turned rocks into weapons and chaos into strategy. You reminded the galaxy that the Accord can be challenged. Yuna leaned forward. What do you want from me, emissary? I want to help you win, and I want you to promise me something in return. What? When humanity defeats the Accord, and I believe you will do not become what we became. Do not build an empire on the bones of others. Do not let power make you cruel. Yuna considered his words carefully. Then, she nodded. You have my word. No. Torak handed her the device. This contains everything you need. The location of our central command station. The frequencies to disable our shield network. Evidence of the 12 Voices crimes against 100 species. Yuna took it, feeling the weight of history in her palm. One more thing, Torek said. High Commander Valen is broken. His obsession with you has made him abandon all strategy. He will come for you personally. When he does, you must be ready. Crom. Yuna returned to her fleet with a plan that was either brilliant or insane. Probably both. She gathered her remaining 22 ships. They were joined by something unexpected vessels from 3 former client species who had finally found the courage to rebel. The ships were old and poorly armed, but their crews burned with the same fire that Yuna had lit with her first speech. Together, they flew not toward Earth, but toward the heart of Accord space. The journey took 2 weeks. Along the way, they avoided major fleet formations and slipped through gaps in patrol routes. Dr. Hana Cho used Torak's information to keep them hidden from Accord sensors. When they finally reached their destination, they did not attack. Instead, they broadcast. Hana sent 2 transmissions simultaneously to every corner of the galaxy. The first was the evidence of Accord atrocities, recordings of massacres, documents proving deliberate starvation of entire populations, orders to destroy species that resisted too strongly. The second was Captain Park's original defiance speech, playing on loop. Her words echoed across 1,000 worlds. We do not kneel. The effect was immediate. On world after world, client species rose up against their Accord overseers. Communications networks carried messages of rebellion. Slaves refused to work. Soldiers refused to fire on civilians. The Accord's empire began to crack from within. High Commander Valen received the news on his flagship. His fleet, already weakened by weeks of fighting, was being recalled to dozens of different locations. The 12 voices were screaming at him through every channel. But Valen no longer cared about the voices. He no longer cared about the Empire. He cared about only one thing. Find the human woman, he snarled. I will kill her myself. The final battle happened near a dying star. The Times, Defiant Times, led Valen's personal squadron away from the main fleet, drawing them deeper and deeper into dangerous space. Valen's flagship was massive, 10 times the size of any human vessel. Its weapons could destroy moons. Its shields could withstand nuclear strikes. Against such a ship, the Times' Defiant Times should have been nothing more than a minor annoyance. But Ensign Suji Yoon had spent weeks learning how to do the impossible. She flew the Times' Defiant Times into an unstable wormhole, a tear in space that scientists said could not be navigated safely. The ship shook and screamed as reality twisted around it. Half the systems failed. 3 crew members were injured, but they emerged behind Valen's flagship. Fire everything, Yuna ordered. The Times' Defiance Times weapons struck the enemy ship's unshielded rear section. Explosions rippled across the massive hull. Power systems failed. The flagship began to drift, dead and silent. Yuna opened one final communication channel. High Commander Valen, she said. Your fleet is broken. Your empire is crumbling. You have lost. There was no response. The flagship floated in darkness, defeated not by superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but by human creativity, human determination, and human refusal to accept the impossible. 2 months later, Captain Yuna Park stood before the 12 voices on the Accord's capital world. She wore her uniform, still scarred from battle. Behind her stood representatives of humanity and the freed species who had joined their cause. The 12 voices looked smaller than she had expected, older. What do you want? One of them asked. Revenge? Power? Our empire? Yuna shook her head. We do not want your empire. We do not want revenge. We want you to understand something. She stepped forward, her voice carrying through the great hall. The galaxy is not yours to order. It belongs to everyone. Every species you conquered, every world you silenced, every voice you tried to erase. She looked at each of the 12 voices in turn. From this day forward, Earth stands not as your enemy, but as proof. Proof that the small can challenge the mighty. Proof that defiance is never futile. Proof that freedom is always possible. She turned to face the gathered crowds, thousands of beings from hundreds of species, watching the moment that would change history. You asked us to surrender, Yuna said, her words broadcasting across the galaxy. We gave you something better. We gave you a future worth living. 10 years later, Fleet Admiral Yuna Park stood on the observation deck of the first joint human galactic exploration vessel. The ship carried humans, former Accord citizens, and members of a dozen species who had once been enemies. Captain Minho Baek, promoted after the war, stood beside her, watching the stars. Do you ever regret it? He asked. That first transmission? The one that started everything? Yuna thought about Admiral Kang, who had died so that others could live. She thought about the crew members lost in battle, the sacrifices made, the price of freedom. The galaxy told us to kneel, she said softly. We chose to stand. That is not something you regret, Minho. That is something you live for. The ship's engines hummed to life. Ahead, unknown stars waited to be explored, not conquered, but discovered, not owned, but shared. Yuna smiled as the vessel jumped to hyperspace. Humanity's next chapter was just beginning.